Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda, and please welcome to our Operation Freedom platform, WeThePeopleProcessing.com. You know, are you tired of being threatened to be canceled just because you have a company focused on liberty and freedom? Well, worry no more, folks. WeThePeopleProcessing.com is your go-to merchant services, freedom-based company to provide business service payment solutions. We the People Processing provides their clients a cancel culture-free platform which is domestically based. They provide competitive rates, no contracts with next-day funding, a fully vetted and like-minded financial infrastructure, and full support for integrations, implementation, and e-commerce efforts. Bottom line, WeThePeopleProcessing.com focuses on defending your company's free market growth, values, and future. Check them out at www.WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Once you're on the site, enter in password Operation Freedom or call 855-499-2024. That's WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Then, when on the website, enter Operation Freedom as your password or call 855-499-2024.
Mr. President-elect, go ahead. Can you state categorically? Mr. President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to Dave versus the MSM. I'd like to thank you for joining me today and thank you for networking this information to anyone and everyone you know. We are available. Now look, do not rely on this platform to send you notifications. Just look at the comments section. Every video I do. They are absolutely throttling this channel. They are manipulating view counts. They are manipulating notifications. They are doing everything in their power to make sure my message, my content does not get to you. Which is why if you want our content and my perspective on what's happening around the country and around the world, the go-to place is davejanda.com. Extra videos, extra content, extra guests, extra analysis, and our most in-depth information where we provide a tremendous number of shows. My WTF show, where I bring information forward every week from my contacts that I've developed over 35 years that I cannot discuss on this platform, on Rumble. And oh yeah, Rumble's throttled as well. On the radio, because there are FCC choke points that won't allow certain issues to be discussed in depth because deep state players are still in the FCC. Bottom line is that content is presented in my WTF show and my Insider Insight shows every week for subscribers. 30 cents a day, $9 a month, biggest bang for the buck. Try it for a month. You don't have to sign up for a year. Try it for a month. If you don't like it, get rid of it. But I'm not sure why. You'll never get exposed to this information. That the key about this information is I put people months, if not years, ahead of this globalist constructed curve that ends in a brick wall with the shattering of your freedoms and your liberties and your future and your life and our constitutional republic. And we provide a road to freedom, an off-ramp with that content. And we hope you'll become part of our freedom family. Now, the cult is intent on a war. Whenever they get in trouble and their back is against the wall, a war happens. World War I, World War II. Look it up historically. Now, Russia, Ukraine, and well, why don't we just send some tanks, and why don't we just, some drones, and well, okay, we'll send some personnel, but we won't really publicize that. We titled this video, The Globalist Cult's War Racket. I want to take you back to Smedley Butler. I've spoken about Major General Smedley Butler of the Marine Corps in the United States a number of times, but it bears repeating in light of events that are occurring around the world. Smedley Butler was, at the time of his death, the most decorated Marine in United States history, had 2 Medals of Honor. He also wrote a book in 1935, that could have been written in 2023, entitled War is a Racket. I want to read a couple things that he wrote. Bears repeating. Because the syndicate does not want you to know about history. They don't want you to know about Smedley Butler. Why? Because you might say, whoa, this was going on back then. And because he mouthed off and brought it public, whoa, he kind of put a dent in that. Here's what he wrote. War is a racket. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of people. Only a small inside group knows what it's about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the masses. Oh, who are the very few? The banking families? Yeah, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Lazards, the Pinkases, the Warburgs, the Seifs, the Loebs, the Pessoa family at the very top of the pyramid? You bet. I believe in an adequate defense at the coastline and nothing else. If a nation comes over here to fight, then we'll fight. The trouble with America is that when the dollar only earns 6% over here, then it gets restless and goes overseas to get 100%. Then the flag follows the dollar and the soldiers follow the flag. Wow. All that money laundering that's been exposed in Ukraine, does it make sense? I wouldn't go to war again as I've done to protect some lousy investment of the bankers. Smedley Butler, 1935. There are only two things we should fight for. One is the defense of our homes, and the other is the Bill of Rights. You know, the one they keep trying to strip and the one they keep trying to get rid of. Yeah. War for any other reason is simply a racket. It may seem odd for me, a military man, to adopt such a comparison. Truthfulness compels me to. I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service as a member of this country's most agile military force, the Marine Corps. I served in all commissioned ranks from second lieutenant to major general. And during that period, I spent most of my time being a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for the banksters and their, quote, capitalism, end quote. I suspected I was just a part of a racket at the time. Now I'm sure of it. Like all the members of the military profession, I never had a thought of my own until I left the service. My mental faculties remained in suspended animation while I obeyed the orders of the higher-ups. This is typical with everyone in the military service. During those years, I had, as the boys in the back room would say, a swell racket. Looking back at it, I feel that I could have given Al Capone in the Midwest a few hints. The best he could do was operate his racket in three districts in the Midwest. I operated on 3 continents. Major General Smedley Butler is true today, if not more so, than when he wrote those words in 1935. War is a racket. And now we have this from Strategic Culture. Sound familiar? Here's the title. War is a racket. Tanks, Tanks, a lot. Now give us F-16s. Yeah, you know that globalist called puppet, Zelensky. That's what he's pushing for. And remember, a couple months ago, he's talking about, well, we could have a limited nuclear event. Right. The war in Ukraine is nothing more than a racket, and the same sort of tradition is condemned by U.S. Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler in the 1930s. Zelensky and his cabal are rife with corruption and profiteering, as the mass sacking of his cabinet officials this week demonstrates. Even the Western media could not ignore the scandal, despite doing their best to whitewash the fiasco as a crackdown on corruption. Those sackings only came about after Zelensky's aides were exposed as being up to their eyes in embezzling, fraud, and bribery. The huge sums of money being pumped into the Kiev regime by Western governments courtesy of Western taxpayers and the debt of future generations is a driver of the corruption. Of course, the Kiev racketeers are demanding more and more weapons from the West because the, quote, big business, end quote, is lining their pockets, offshore properties, and bank accounts. How many houses does Zelensky have? He's a billionaire, and he was a lousy actor. He even has a big compound in Florida, right? Well, you make a lot of money when you're involved in weapons trafficking and human trafficking and money laundering, right? Money traffic, right? Oh, yeah. And of course, the Western weapons companies are all too happy to ramp up production, sales, and profits. Western politicians and governments are feeding at the trough of the military-industrial complex through lobbyists and board members organizations, like the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who's hooked up with Raytheon, another Pentagon firm that has enriched itself from the Ukraine conflict. This is all from strategic culture, and they're completely on target here. Despite Western media propaganda about defending Ukraine and fighting for democracy, the reality is the United States and its NATO minions are all for greasing the war machine capitalist economies and for their own personal gain. The tragedy is that the weapons pipelines will not help Ukraine. Russian forces are decimating the NATO-sponsored neo-Nazi regime. Not even tanks or warplanes will salvage the Ukraine military disaster. The West is filling a bloodbath in Ukraine for their merchants of death. The obscenity of callosity, shoving people into a slaughter for no moral or just cause, but all for the profit-making of corporations. Themselves and the corrupt cabal in Kiev is despicable beyond words. The real danger is that the vampiric orgy of weapons going to Ukraine could provoke a terrifying world war and global catastrophe. That is the measure of the evil at the heart of the Western powers and their puppet masters. The First and Second World Wars were manifestations of the same evil imperialist system. If it had its way, that is without Russia's restraining power, then the world is facing another calamity brought about by the same criminal system. And what do you have? You have Il Demente Biden saying, sending tanks. Tanks a lot? Quote, not an offensive threat, end quote. What? Imagine if Russia sent tanks to Mexico. Biden downplays U.S. tanks in Ukraine as Russia warns decision is extremely dangerous. German foreign minister just said the quiet part out loud on Ukraine. German Foreign Minister Angela Baerbock bluntly stated in fresh remarks that Western allies are fighting a war against Russia. CNN admits Ukraine war is a weapons lab for Western arms. Dave DeCamp, anti-war. Ukraine has turned it into a lab for Western arms as the war has given the U.S. and its allies an opportunity to see how their weapons fare in a conflict with major military powers like Russia, CNN reported. CNN, no less. A source familiar with Western intelligence on the war told CNN that Ukraine is, quote, absolutely a weapons lab in every sense because none of this equipment has ever actually been used in a war between two industrial developed nations, end quote. The source described it as, quote, real-world battle testing, end quote. Ukraine rocked by corruption scandal, wave of top officials resigned, sports cars, mansions, and luxury vacations as people suffered, all with U.S. taxpayer money. And what did a recent government official from Nigeria say? We're seeing a huge number of arms here in Africa that are actually being laundered through Ukraine. Does this surprise anybody? What was Benghazi all about? We've had Charles Woods, the father of Ty Woods, who died in Benghazi, a regular on our platform, Michael Igmeyer, whose nephew, Sean Smith, died in Benghazi. We had military whistleblowers come on our platform, can't show those interviews here, about what Benghazi was all about. It was a weapons running operation run by Obama and Biden and Hillary Clinton that went bad. They were running weapons into Benghazi to take out Gaddafi. And then they reversed those flows and they were sending those weapons into Turkey, into Syria to weaponize who? ISIS. And now we know from the Fast and Furious, from Obama and Biden and Eric Holder as Attorney General, a regular on our platform, Victor Avila, INS agent extraordinaire, was almost killed, and his partner, Jaime Zapata, was killed by weapons from the Fast and Furious operation, which was when the United States government handed weapons over to Mexican drug cartels because they were trying to work an anti-Second Amendment deal here, and it backfired. And Brian Terry, a border agent, was killed, and Victor was almost killed, and Jaime Zapata was killed with those weapons, and those weapons ended up in Benghazi, by the way. We have a long-standing history of weapons running, and Biden is now weapons running tanks and drones. And now F-16s are on the potential table. War is a racket. A racket that benefits the globalist cult. It always has and it always will. Fact. Now, I believe if you come and you show this video and you go over to your neighbors and your family and friends, they will know none of this. And it's not because they're dumb. It's because they have been kept in the dark historically. And that is not an accident. My mom, the history teacher, we're doomed to repeat the past if we do not know history and historical events. Yeah. And the cult is counting on that. Because out of these wars, they get more power, more control, and more financial resources. It's a playbook that's worked many times, and it's working again. Let's channel Nancy Reagan, just say no. Just say no to war. Just say no to the racket. You need to contact every political figure that is in your orbit, local, state, and national, and tell them to cut this out. There's no vital national security issue on the table for the United States and Ukraine. We have discussed this at length in our platform. And you know that there are advisors from a number of Western countries on the ground. And every single one of their lives has been put in jeopardy. And I believe that's willful, because it gives the nidus the seed for escalation and more money laundering and weapons trafficking and human trafficking to continue. Fact. I thank you for joining me today. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. We are available 24/7 at davejanda.com. You will not be disappointed if you go there. The information you get, you will see nowhere else on the internet. Fact. Thanks for your time today. Dream big and dare to fail.